So much is riding on the outcome of the Senate election in Georgia. Will the Reverend Warnock get elected to the Senate and have the Democrats control the Senate, or will he lose because of views he has expressed regarding Israel and views that I have exposed in an article today in Newsweek magazine? I'm getting a lot of flack for not being partisan enough. I'm not partisan enough. I will always put the truth over partisan issues. We'll discuss this and other concerns on this morning's Dirt Show. This morning, I published a blockbuster article in Newsweek magazine with a very large circulation about the Reverend Warnock matter. The title of the article is "Will Warnock's Anti-Israel Views Determine Who Controls the Senate?" The reaction was swift and furious. Both sides, extremists on both sides, hate what I wrote. On the one hand, Democrats who want to control the Senate at all costs are furious at me for disclosing the dark side of the Reverend Warnock's views about Israel, in which he engages in blood libels, says that Israel shoots down innocent Palestinian children like birds of prey. Totally false. No truth to that whatsoever. On the other hand, I get pushback from conservatives and Republicans and some pro-Israel people saying, wait a minute, but you're still saying he has a chance to redeem himself? If he were to change his mind completely and come out now and say, I was wrong, I made a mistake, I was unduly influenced by people on the hard left, I will now stand with Israel unequivocally, that you could support him? This shows the difficulties, and it's difficulties I've long experienced, of trying to be bipartisan, of trying to be neutral, of trying to be in some ways nonpartisan. Here I am laying out the truth about what the Reverend Warnock has said. He's compared Israel to apartheid South Africa. He has compared Israel's security barriers to the Berlin Wall. Never in the statement does he mention the word terrorism, ever. Why do you think Israel built the security barrier? Because it looks so beautiful? Because it now has a lot of graffiti on it? No. It has saved thousands and thousands of lives. Since the security barrier was built, there's been far, far less terrorism from the West Bank. He talks about Israel attacking Gaza and killing people meaninglessly without any cause whatsoever. Never once mentioning the terror tunnels that were built between Gaza and Israeli kibbutzim, which were targeting Israeli children, school children. Not a word about the terror rockets, not a word about the inflammatory balloons loaded with fire-causing equipment that have burned thousands of acres of Israeli land and endangered the lives of Israeli citizens. Not a word. Totally one-sided, biased, extreme arguments against Israel. I just cannot sit silently by and allow a man to be elected to the United States Senate who still holds those views, even if it means that the Democrats cannot control the Senate. I'm a liberal Democrat. My preference would be for the Democrats to control the Senate. I know many of my viewers and listeners would rather see the Republicans control the Senate. That's your prerogative. That's not my argument today. My argument today is, as a liberal Democrat who wants to see the Democrats control the Senate, I cannot support that result if it's at the price of bigotry by the Reverend Warnock against the nation state of the Jewish people. I wonder if the shoe were on the other foot, whether he could do it. If he were a liberal Democrat, which he is, in control of the Senate, or up to a Democrat who had expressed views about African American people, or about affirmative action, or about Black Lives Matter, which he found to be thoroughly obnoxious, what would he put first? Would he put first control of the Senate, or would he put first telling the truth about a man who might get elected to the Senate with those kind of anti-black bigoted views. You have to have one standard. You can't have a double standard. And so I'm proud of this article. It's going to cause me a lot of grief. I'm going to lose even more friends among Democrats. I'm getting mail every single day. You got to support Warnock. You got to support Democratic control of the Senate. If Democrats don't control the Senate, the next president, if it's Biden, won't get to have his agenda. It'll be blocked by McConnell. I don't want that. I would much prefer to see Democrats be able to control the Senate. That's my personal view. I don't express personal views a lot on this show, or my political views, but I have to mention that now because it's so contrary to what I'm saying about Warnock. And so I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to continue to be a liberal Democrat, but I'm going to continue to tell the truth about other liberal Democrats. I would take the same view if AOC were today running for the Senate. I would take the same view certainly if Bernie Sanders were running for president, and I took that view. Here it's different because Warnock's election may determine the outcome of who controls the Senate, something I care about. But it may also determine whether we have yet another United States senator who is moving in the direction of the squad, who is breaking the bipartisan support for Israel that has historically existed and moving the Democrats away from Israel and toward terrorism and supporting of terrorist activities. In his statement, he says that the Palestinians basically have given up terrorism, and he congratulates them for that, without mentioning what happened to a brave American soldier who was touring in Israel, Taylor Force, and who was knifed to death by a Palestinian terrorist, and that the Palestinian Authority is paying his family, pay to slay, incitements toward killing. That's the reality that's happening today. He says in his recent op-ed that he doesn't support BDS and he stands with Israel. And I want to hear more. I invited him to this show. He hasn't responded. I would love to sit down with him and have a conversation and find out how deep either his past anti-Israel feelings are or how deep his current pro-Israel feelings, which he asserts in an op-ed called I Stand With Israel, how deep they are. I'm not interested in election conversions. I'm not interested in people who are prepared to state talking points in favor of Israel in order to get elected and then change back as soon as they're elected to the Senate. I want to know what he really believes. I think voters who support Israel are entitled to know what he really believes. Look, if you're a Republican and want to see control of the Senate and the Republicans, life's easy in this regard. You oppose Warnock. If you're a liberal Democrat who doesn't care about Israel, life's easy. You just support Warnock. But there are many, many, many Democrats who are pro-Israel, just as there are many Republicans who are pro-Israel. For Democrats who are pro-Israel, this presents a conundrum. It presents a difficulty. And I want to expose that difficulty and force people to make difficult choices. That's part of my job. That was my job as a professor. I made students make hard choices. I made them understand that life's not easy, that there is no free lunch, that tragic choices will always exist in their life, where you get balances on one side and balances on the other. And you have to make difficult choices. You have to show priorities. And that's what I'm doing now. We have to show priorities. And it's difficult. It's so easy if you just go down the line as a Democrat, if you go down the line as a Republican. If Trump can do no wrong, that's easy. If Trump can do no right, that's easy. But if you believe, as I do, that Trump did a great deal of good, namely with regard to the Middle East peace process, but that he did other things that I fundamentally disagree with regarding immigration, then life becomes difficult. Or moving to today's issues that are in the headlines about whether or not there should be recounts, whether or not there should be litigation. Again, I'm stuck in the middle. I'm a liberal Democrat, but I do believe that there are serious constitutional issues involving some of the votes that went against President Trump. I do believe there are serious issues growing out of Pennsylvania, whether or not the courts in Pennsylvania had the constitutional power to extend the deadline for receiving and counting ballots by 3 days after the legislature refused to do so. I am concerned as a person who is both a Democrat and cares deeply about integrity and constitutional issues, whether there is anything to the argument about these computer glitches and about whether any of the computer glitches could have determined the outcome of the election differently, or whether or not there was any purposefulness behind hiring this firm, which allegedly had as one of its top people somebody who's on the Biden transition team. As you know from my show, I was always interested in the Hunter Biden matter. I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of that. Again, I'm a liberal Democrat, but I care about truth, integrity, virtue, and I want to make sure that it's equally applied to all sides. So, to my viewers, again, if you're on one side, that's fine. If you're on the other side, that's fine. But if you're a bipartisan, if you're somebody who votes for the candidate, not the party, if you're a person who puts country over party, if you're a person who puts integrity and truth over party, this is the show to come to. This is the show to listen to, because I'm always going to put truth over party affiliations. I'm always going to put integrity and the Constitution over party affiliations. That's why I stood on the floor of the United States Senate and lost so many friends, even relatives, when I argued against the impeachment of President Trump. Not because I had voted for President Trump. No, I had voted against him in 2016. I had voted for Hillary Clinton. But because I believed and believe to this day, to the core of my being, that the impeachment articles against President Trump were unconstitutional. You cannot impeach a president for abuse of power or for somehow interfering with Congress. Every president virtually has been accused of abuse of power, and virtually every president has tried to obstruct Congress when they think that Congress is intruding on their proper executive prerogatives. So join me, become bipartisan, look at issues individually, tell me what you think, call me, tell me whether you think I'm too partisan on one side or the other. Tell me whether you think it is possible to be bipartisan in today's divisive and hyper-partisan world. Now let's turn to our listeners and hear what they have to say about the election and about all these ongoing controversial and divided issues. I told you you'd never be bored on the Dirt Show. We live in exciting times. Sometimes we wish it were a little less exciting with the pandemic, with racial division, with electoral issues, with all the things that I thought we had put behind us. But here we are experiencing these issues, and they don't unite. We thought maybe they would unite us. They divide us even further. Welcome to the divided states of America. I hope maybe someday soon in my lifetime, we will once again become the United States of America and the United People of America. So let's turn to our listeners and viewers now. Our first call this morning is from Florida.
Alan, I am one of your greatest fans. I've been reading your books for the last 20 or so years. You're a brilliant constitutional lawyer. And I just want to weigh in on your dilemma regarding the Reverend Warnock in the runoff election in Georgia. And just to pose the problem more clearly for you. And by the way, I am a Democrat, and I am 150% pro-Israel, have relatives in Israel, etc. So, imagine the extreme case to help you with this, Alan. Imagine Warnock was an out-and-out rabid Nazi who out-and-out advocated the destruction of every Jew on earth. What you've got here is a case where Warnock would be 1 out of 100 senators, the vast majority of whom are pro-Israel. And what damage could 1 out of 100 do? Weigh that up against whether the Senate becomes Democrat-controlled or Republican-controlled. I think it's more important to get the Senate Democrat-controlled. I don't think one ignoramus out of 100 could do that much damage. And I think that is the way out of your dilemma.
Well, thank you. You make an excellent point, a point that many Democrats will press on me, but I cannot allow bigotry ever to enter the door of the Senate, even if it's just one senator. Throw it back at you. What if it were one senator who was an old Southern segregationist and he determined the control of the Senate, as happened many times in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s? I don't think I would support that senator either. Bigotry spreads, and when bigotry is in any way affirmed or justified, it begins to become legitimated. And so I'm going to stand up against bigotry. Look, I would love to have it both ways. I'd love to have the Reverend Warnock persuade me that he's really, really changed his views. And he now really stands with Israel. And he now really rejects what he had previously said. Then I have no conflict. But absent that kind of turnaround, the idea of even one United States senator being elected, having expressed the views he expressed, both in the letter and in the sermon he gave, is not something I can ethically and morally accept. So thanks for your view, and it's very helpful. But it, in the end, doesn't persuade me. Only he can persuade me if he changes his mind. I hope he will. Hey, Arnold from Queens, New York. What's your point?
I'm a practicing gastroenterologist in affiliation with Cornell and son of Holocaust survivors and a firm believer in the security of the State of Israel and the strength of the IDF in protecting us from another genocide. And I so admire your podcasts and your firm commitment to Israel and your fairness. My simple question to you is, as somebody who's as smart as you are, and as somebody like me who's also a good judge of human nature, even if Reverend Warnock were to retract any of his anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, pro-murderous propaganda, how could you accept any of that as being genuine? What criteria would you use to make you really believe that this is genuine and for you to potentially endorse him?
What a great question. I've been thinking a lot about that. What if he would have come on this show and say all the right things? No, I'd need to know more than that. I'd need to know how he came to the views he came to when he signed that statement. I need to know how he came to give the sermon that he gave. I need to know what his views were and are of the Reverend Wright, who has expressed such anti-American and anti-Israel views. I'd need to really get into the depths of his soul. Can I do that? I don't know. Do I trust politicians making statements in order to get elected? No, I don't. I'm very skeptical. So I think it would be uphill for him to persuade me, but it's possible. I have met people who have genuinely changed their views. I have met liberals who have become staunch conservatives and really mean it. I have met conservatives who have become staunch liberals and really mean it. I do believe that changing of minds is possible. Instantaneous changing of minds for partisan political purposes in order to get elected doesn't impress me very much. So you're absolutely right. The criteria should be daunting, and for me, I have to be persuaded. For everybody else, it's your choice. You listen to him, you listen to what he said, you compare it to what he said in the past, what he's saying now, and make your own judgment. You may also want to take into account how strongly you believe you want the Senate to be in the hands of one party or the other. I'm not saying this is an easy choice for me or for anybody else, but your point is a very, very good one, so thanks. Martin in Florida, what's your question?
I heard you say that you don't care what's in his heart with respect to his feelings about Judaism or Zionism. But indeed, I think that's an important aspect, because it's not just how he speaks or how he conducts himself, but what's in his heart, because that will be reflected at some later date, somehow, somewhere. So a lot of these politicians, they'll speak one way, but once they get in office, they have entirely different approach or feeling how they're going to conduct themselves. And I think that's important. And unfortunately, he either doesn't pay attention or he's ill-informed about what Jews have done for mankind, not just mankind, but for many other causes. For example, the two Jewish boys that lost their lives in Mississippi, traveling with a black boy, or the Jewish influence on the NAACP, or many other instances. So what's in his heart is important.
Look, I agree with you. I would not support him unless I felt that he had had a change of heart. But obviously, I'm interested in how he would vote and whether he would vote for Israel. He says he would vote against BDS, the boycott movement against Israel. He said he would vote not to condition military aid to Israel, that he would vote for support for Israel's security. I hope that's all true, but there will be nuanced votes that come up about the Iran deal. There will be votes that will come up about whether to perhaps rescind some of the accomplishments that President Trump has done on behalf of Israel. I really want to know how he's going to vote on these issues, whether he's going to be more influenced by AOC and by the various other senators. After all, we already have several senators who are anti-Israel. Bernie Sanders is anti-Israel. There is a Jewish senator named Cohen from Tennessee, I think, who's generally been anti-Israel. In fact, maybe he's a congressman, I can't remember, but he has expressed anti-Israel views, as have several members of Congress. So I'd want to know how he was going to vote, but deep down, I could not support him unless I felt that he had made a change of heart. So I appreciate your point of view. Our next call is from Thomas in Tennessee.
I'm calling about your question with the Senate candidates for Georgia. I think it would be more appropriate if you were to also invite the Republican challenger, for which your concerns with the other candidate, the Democrat who has all the issues with Israel that he supposedly has now changed his mind on, sounds a little convenient. But I think the Republican should make her case as to why you would deserve her vote, why your listeners should consider her. If you're going to give the opportunity for one side, it's only fair that the other should have the opportunity as well. And it would then, provide a chance for Georgia, the citizens of Georgia, to, get your tough questions on the table for both candidates. So I understand your dilemma, but if you, in the interest of being fair and of finding someone who's going to support Israel in a way that you like, you should look at the Republican candidate.
You're absolutely right. Of course I should. And I will. If the Reverend Warnock accepts my invitation and comes on the show, I will invite Senator Kelly Loeffler, who owns a WNBA basketball team and whose husband, if I'm not mistaken, is Jewish. I would like to hear her views, not only on Israel, because I know her views on Israel. She's a very strong supporter of Israel. But I'd like to hear her views on a woman's right to choose abortion, on gay rights, on a range of other issues that I deeply care about. I'm not suggesting for a moment that I could support her or vote for her. I don't know. I haven't focused on that issue, and I don't really know all of her views on those issues. Hard for me to believe that a woman who owned a WNBA basketball team could be opposed to a woman's right to choose abortion, at least under certain circumstances, but you never know. And so, yeah, you're absolutely 100% right. In fairness, I should and I would invite Senator Loeffler to come and express her views on Israel and on a range of subjects, and she will get the same Dershowitz treatment, hard cross-examination, that the Reverend Warnock would get. So thanks for your excellent suggestion, which I accept. Wow, as I've always said, I judge my classes by how much I learn from the students. I have learned so much from my viewers and listeners today who have asked questions. You made me change my mind on a few issues relating to inviting the opponent of Warnock to come on the show, whether the change has to be a change of heart or a change of mind or a change of vote. Great questions, great suggestions. You got me thinking. You really got me thinking. That's what I love about this show. I hope I make you think, but I know You make me think. And please come back for more exchanges of views and each of us helping each other think through complex and divisive issues, because you're going to always get it straight down the middle, bipartisan, nonpartisan, on the Der Show. So please come back and listen for more. An important part of the Der Show is your voice, your questions, your comments. Please call 24/7. The number is 216-710-0050. Keep your comments short and to the point. Again, the number for you to call 24/7 is 216-710-0050. Hard questions, criticisms, everything's fine. Just keep your questions short, and I'll answer them all on the Der Show.